I'm Dustin Baker. This is VikesNow. We're on the final day of January 31st, and we're chatting about the prospective Vikings defensive coordinator. We are 12 days into this defensive coordinator list. Ed Donatel was not retained for 2023. That's how we got here. The Vikings defense ranked 27th via defensive DVOA, 30th in points allowed, and 31st in yards allowed. And that was not a winning meal ticket for the 2023 Vikings, who we presume will want to be contenders once again. And if indeed they have that mentality, which is kind of what they're saying with this championship standard stuff, then you got to improve on defense. So here we are chatting about the defensive coordinator and wondering what the hell is going on. When are we going to name this guy? So I want to chat for about 10-15 minutes about this topic, which means while I'm recording this, they'll probably announce who the dude is, and then the topic will be moot. But that is okay if that's what it takes to name the guy to satisfy our curiosities. Bada bing, count me in. I want to say foremost, and you can shut the show off after this little announcement. I think all of this hinges on Brian Flores, who was for 3 years the coach of the Miami Dolphins, the head coach, the skipper, and then beset by controversy, wouldn't tank for the Dolphins. I'm not sure if he wanted Deshaun Watson or somebody else did, or somebody else wanted Brady and he didn't, but it didn't end well for him in Miami, even though they finished the 2021 season on a fantastic winning streak, even beating the Patriots in week 18. No cigar. The Dolphins went in a different direction, got Mike McDaniel, and Brian Flores went to the Pittsburgh Steelers as a linebacker coach. Now, Mr. Flores is interviewing for the head gig with the Arizona Cardinals. And he's also in a candidate pool with Sean Payton, that Mike Kafka guy from the Giants, offensive coordinator, and now the Bengals defensive coordinator. Just a bunch of dudes, rightfully so, interviewing for the Cardinals job. But I'm pretty sure that the reason the Vikings have not made a decision on defensive coordinator is because Flores is their guy. I should say I don't have insider information. It is my educated guess that they want Flores and they want to see, all right, is he going to get the HC job in Arizona? Because if he does not, then they would have to pivot to somebody else. And right now their list is skimpy because Ryan Nielsen took the Falcons job. So it's pretty much down to Sean Desai and Mike Pettin. So on Flores, in my opinion, that's probably who they've circled and said, all right, we're going to contend in 2023. Therefore, we want a sure thing on defense, which is Brian Flores. When he took over the Dolphins, the defense was absolutely abysmal. Even in his first year, it ranked dead last in the NFL per, I believe, EPA per play, 32nd. But it quickly, once he got his feet underneath him, got his guys, it got pretty damn good. Top 10 in 2020. The Dolphins defense under Flores' tutelage ranked 7th in the NFL, and the defense in 2021, the Dolphins defense, that is, ranked 8th. So there is a track record when this man is in the saddle. The defense is, rip-roaring and a top 10 bunch. So I think Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, Kevin O'Connell recognize this and think, all right, how do we fix a shitty defense? A bend but don't break farce that absolutely broke against the New York Giants in the postseason. Boom, we go get Brian Flores. So I'm guessing the Cardinals' job is the domino. Once you know who that head coach is, the Vikings defensive coordinator search will continue because it's hit a standstill. Let's face it. I do this little tracker on VikingsTerritory.com for the defensive coordinator search, and I haven't updated the bastard in about 4 days because nothing has happened since Ryan Nielsen took the Falcons job. Unscientifically, I polled Twitter, the Vikings fan section of Twitter, about who they want for defensive coordinator, and 86% said Brian Flores. So, if my theory is correct, and I guess Flores doesn't get the Cardinals job and the Vikings hire Flores, we're going to have a bunch of happy campers because this is the dude that as soon as the DC coach or search began, folks were like, all right, get me Flores, we'll be set. In fact, he was the first guy they announced as an interview candidate, so it really got the defensive coordinator search off with the bang because you're like, all right, they're serious about this. If Flores is not the 2023 defensive coordinator, I believe then that they would pivot to their second choice, who is Sean Desai. He was the assistant head coach or defensive assistant for the Seattle Seahawks, who had a decent defense in 2022. And before that, he was kind of a disciple in Vic Fangio's Bears and Ed Donatell system. He's the first man with Indian roots, the country India, to be a coordinator in the NFL, and he could be the Vikings defensive coordinator if Flores is not the dude. His defenses, at least what he's contributed to the Bears, were pretty fancy, and I think he could do a wonderful job for the team. So I'm here to tell you that if Flores gets the Cardinals job, or if I'm completely wrong and they don't want him at all, and Desai is named as the hire, you don't have to just, shrug your shoulders and be like, I wanted Flores. Desai should be a pretty decent one. Mike Pettin, that one's tricky. I don't think anybody is too enthusiastic about Mr. Pettin. Not against anything against him personally. It's just that he represents the defense from last year, at least how we look at it now. Donatell's not coming back. How do you improve? Well, most would say let's go get a new guy who can be accountable for the 2023 defense. Hiring Mike Pettin would be a tip of the cap to that we were this close last year to being a good defense, and not many of us believe that. So I don't think that Pettin will be the guy. I guess stranger things have happened, but it's also one of those things that they just could have hired him already. They know him inside and out. He's been there for a year. He helped, I guess, the good parts of that Donatell defense thrive, the turnover-forcing acumen of the 2022 Vikings defense. But no, I think they interviewed Pettin, had an honest to goodness shot at the job, but Flores is probably an upgrade, and if it's not Flores, then Desai. So the moral of the story, in my opinion, is that everybody who cares about this guy, and then you watching this show, if you're in the weeds enough watching a show like this, you care about the Vikings defensive coordinator. I think everything is dependent on the domino effect of the Arizona Cardinals head coaching search. Got a bunch of dudes in it right now, and they're interviewing guys who just got done on Championship Sunday. And so it'll take a bit. I don't know. It could be one of those things where they announce the Arizona head coach at 3 p.m. today or 3 p.m. next Tuesday. But I believe that's what everything is hostage right now in terms of the Vikings thing. And for a little context, in 2021, we waited until February 9th, which is also my mother's birthday, if you care, February 9th, for Clint Kubiak to be named offensive coordinator. And he was an in-house candidate. Wasn't very sexy hire at the time, nor did it pan out too tremendously 8 months later in the regular season. But we have precedent for waiting this long for a search that seems straightforward. It took until February 9th for Mike Zimmer to officially put the title on Clint Kubiak in 2021. So I guess the end game is, if you look at how things have happened in the past, you only have to wait probably another week if nothing has been decided, because it would be very weird if they drag this thing out way past the Super Bowl. I guess in theory they could also be waiting to chat with the dude who was on the Eagles or Chiefs staff, but I think they could have already begun those discussions, and then therefore we would have heard about it. Finally, I think that the decision on the caliber of defensive coordinator is important for the big picture of how the offseason is going to plan out, the roadmap, the puzzle that comes together. What do I mean? Well, Brian Flores or even Sean Desai, if one of those two guys is the hire, that is an early hint that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell planned to build this team to be a contender in 2023. If they went and hired Jake Davis from the Turquoise Hawks in the XFL, then you'd be like, oh, oofta, what is this? If they went and hired some no-name from the Arena Football League, that would probably indicate, oh, maybe we are going to start to rebuild this roster a little bit. A big name that is almost guaranteed results like Brian Flores, that would suggest, all right, we're going to get younger on defense, probably going to keep Kirk in the QB1 for at least another year or two, extend that Jefferson contract, use free agency to get better, and then you are in a familiar spot of Vikings football for about, 8 years running, being all in to try to win the damn Super Bowl. Conversely, if they hire somebody you've never heard of, that doesn't necessarily mean all right, all the chips are in. Then you could see an offseason riddled with change, Cousins possibly being traded. If they do indeed tear it down to kind of the ground and start over. It'd be very weird if they did that, because Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has told us his philosophy on team building, and that is, in these circumstances, a competitive rebuild to achieve a championship standard. So I think that means to him rebuilding on the fly and being like this year. If you could consider that a rebuild, it's 13-4. Next year, if they get rid of Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, Eric Kendricks, CJ Ham, all of those guys you know and love, that'll feel emotionally like a rebuild, and all they're really doing is cutting the expensive contracts in favor of affordable players and or rookies. So the decision, the Brian Flores, the Sean Desai, or unnamed guy we've never heard of, it'll tell you a lot about what they have planned for 2023, because if it's a big-name guy, that means we're back doing this thing in September, wanting to win the NFC North and wanting to win the elusive Super Bowl. All right, I will go get this up published, and we'll see if they have named a defensive coordinator by then. If they have not, it should be known to you within the next week, possibly right after the Super Bowl, if they're waiting for a juicy candidate from that game. That's all I got for Tuesday. We'll talk to you tomorrow with Josh Fry. Skol, baby.